There's a strange kind of silence that fills a home when love quietly dies. It doesn't slam the door on its way out. It tiptoes, leaving echoes in places you never thought could feel empty. I noticed it first in the way Marlene stopped laughing at my dumb jokes. Jokes she once claimed were her favorite part of me. We had built a life together, or at least that's what I thought. I was content, maybe too content, with our sleepy little town in Vermont, our two-bedroom house that always smelled faintly of cinnamon and old wood, and our lazy Sunday afternoons where time seemed to freeze. I guess Marlene wanted more. Or maybe she just wanted something different. It all came to a head one rainy evening. The kind of rain that seems to peel the color off everything it touches. I had just gotten back from the hardware store, a roll of duct tape and a bag of dog food in hand, when I found her standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, face stone cold. Without warning, without even a fight to preface it, she screamed at me, "I'm better off on my own." The words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just stared at her for a long second, feeling like the ground had quietly dropped out from under me. Then I set the bag down, walked past her, and went upstairs to pack a bag. By the time Marlene realized what she had actually said, and what it had cost her, I was already. Well, let's just say the next chapter of my life was waiting, and it wasn't what either of us expected. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't shout or demand answers. Truth is, I didn't have the energy. I tossed a few clothes into a beat-up duffel bag I hadn't touched since college, grabbed my wallet and car keys, and just drove. The rain was still coming down hard, blurring the windshield like a bad dream you can't quite wake up from. I had no destination, just the road, the pounding rain, and the pounding in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I ended up at this old motel about 30 miles out, a place called the Timberline. It smelled like mildew and desperation, but it was cheap, and more importantly, it was somewhere Marlene wouldn't think to look. I checked in with a fake smile, paid cash, and collapsed onto the rock-hard mattress, staring up at the cracked ceiling. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice echoing in my head. "I'm better off on my own." Over and over, like a cruel mantra. I kept wondering what I did wrong. Was I too boring? Too predictable? Was it my thinning hair, the extra weight I put on last winter? My mind spiraled through every self-doubt, picking me apart like vultures over a carcass. At some point, between 3 and 4 in the morning, I decided I wasn't going to chase her. If she wanted to be on her own, fine. She could have all the empty space she screamed for. I wasn't going to be the fool who begged for scraps of love like a dog under the dinner table. Still, despite my stubborn pride, a part of me was already breaking, quietly, invisibly. And in that cracked motel room, surrounded by peeling wallpaper and the distant hum of a broken vending machine, I realized something. When Marlene finally came to regret what she said, I might not be there to hear it. But fate, as it turns out, had other plans. The first week away from Marlene felt like walking through a dense fog. I wasn't living, I was surviving. Days blended together. I existed between bad motel coffee, stale bagels from the gas station next door, and long drives to nowhere just to keep from thinking too much. Every mile I put between me and our little house in Vermont felt heavy, like I was carrying pieces of my old life in a backpack that grew heavier by the hour. I thought she might call. I kept the phone close, checking it more often than I want to admit. A text, a voicemail, something to suggest she realized she had gone too far. But there was nothing, just silence. Somehow that was worse than anger. Silence meant she didn't care enough to fight. Silence meant she meant every word she said that night. On the 8th day, just when I was beginning to accept that maybe this was it, that maybe we had both just quietly folded our hands and walked away from 12 years like it was nothing, my phone lit up. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Almost. But some stubborn part of me, the same stupid hope that had kept me checking my phone like a teenager, made me answer. It was Marlene's sister, Heather. Her voice was shaking. I could hear the worry laced through every syllable as she said, "I don't know what's happening with Marlene. She's not answering anyone. She's not, right. I think she's losing it." For a moment, I just stood there, motel key dangling from my hand. Part of me wanted to hang up, tell Heather it wasn't my problem anymore. Another part of me, the broken, still aching part, couldn't help but feel that old pull of responsibility. She was still my wife, after all. For better or worse, right? even if she didn't want me anymore. Heather told me Marlene had been showing up at work late, missing appointments, saying strange things to clients. Then yesterday, she didn't show up at all. Her boss had tried calling the police for a welfare check, but Marlene wasn't at home. Her car was gone. No one knew where she was. I should have been furious. I should have felt vindicated. But all I felt was a sick, heavy dread. Because no matter how much Marlene had hurt me, I couldn't just sit by and do nothing. That's not who I am. That's not who we were. I checked out of the Timberline that night, threw my sad duffel bag into the trunk of my old Honda and pointed the car back toward home, toward the wreckage I had tried so hard to escape. The drive back was different. No rain this time, just a flat, endless sky and the kind of heavy air that makes you feel like a storm is building even when the sun is still out. I kept picturing her. Alone. Scared. Regretful. I wondered if she missed me, if she regretted what she said, if she even realized how close she was to losing everything she thought she didn't need. But as much as I tried to prepare myself for what I might find, nothing could have prepared me for what actually happened when I finally got home. When I pulled onto our street, everything looked painfully the same. The neighbors' houses still had their trimmed hedges and seasonal wreaths. Kids' bikes still littered the sidewalks. Even our house, the two-story blue one with the sagging porch swing, looked untouched, like it had been frozen in time the moment I left. Except now, it felt less like a home and more like the memory of one. I parked across the street, hesitating for a long minute before stepping out. My hands were sweaty on the steering wheel. I wasn't ready. Part of me wanted to turn the key and drive until the whole town was a distant dot in the rearview mirror. But then I remembered Heather's voice, trembling with worry, and I knew I couldn't. Crossing the street felt like wading through concrete. Every step closer to the house tightened the knot in my chest. The front door was unlocked. That alone made my stomach drop. Marlene had always been obsessive about locking it, double-checking, even when we lived in the safest neighborhood for miles. Something was wrong. Really wrong. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house smelled stale, like dust and something sour underneath it. I called out her name, my voice cracking slightly, but the only answer was the low hum of the refrigerator. I moved cautiously through the rooms, the living room, the kitchen, the stairs. Everything was eerily still. I started to wonder if she had even been here at all. Then I found her. She was curled up on the floor of the guest bedroom, still in her work clothes from who knows how many days ago. Her hair was a tangled mess, her eyes red-rimmed and glassy. Empty wine bottles were scattered around her like sad little trophies of surrender. And clutched tightly in her hand, crumpled and torn at the edges, was a photo of the two of us, laughing at the beach, years ago, when everything still felt possible. My heart twisted painfully at the sight of her. She looked so small, so lost. This was not the strong, sharp woman who had once screamed she was better off without me. This was someone drowning, and I couldn't tell if she even realized it. I knelt beside her, gently shaking her shoulder. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion washing over her face, followed by something else, something that broke me more than all her cruel words ever could. It was regret. Pure, raw regret. "Grant," she whispered hoarsely, reaching out like a child lost in a nightmare. I caught her hand in mine, feeling how cold and fragile she had become. I wanted to say something, anything, but no words came. What do you say to someone who threw you away, only to crumble when they realized what they lost? As I helped her sit up, her body shaking with silent sobs, I realized that whatever came next, the life we once had, the one we built together, was gone. Maybe not because of that one awful night. Maybe because somewhere along the way, we had stopped choosing each other. Marlene wasn't the only one who had gotten lost. I had too. I just hadn't seen it until it was too late. But even then, sitting on that dusty floor with her broken in my arms, I couldn't hate her. I couldn't even be angry. I just felt tired. Bone-deep tired, like I had been carrying both of us for so long that now, finally, I didn't have the strength to pick us up again. And that's when I realized, saving her was never my job anymore. She had to save herself. And I had to figure out who I was without her. I stayed with Marlene on that floor longer than I probably should have. I held her while she cried, her hands clutching my shirt like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to this world. She didn't say much at first, just broken apologies, mumbled between hiccuped sobs. "I'm sorry, Grant. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean any of it." Over and over, like a prayer to a God that had already packed up and left. But apologies, no matter how desperate, don't unring the bell. Once you tell someone you're better off without them, once you shove them into the cold and slam the door, there's no clean way to take it back. Words aren't rubber bands. They don't snap back into place just because you want them to. Eventually, I helped her stand. She was shaky, leaning heavily on me as we stumbled toward the living room. The couch, the same faded gray one we'd picked out together during our first year of marriage, sagged under her weight as she collapsed onto it. I brought her a glass of water from the kitchen, brushing dust off the counter first like that somehow made a difference. We sat there in a heavy, suffocating silence. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I couldn't find it in myself to force her. The clock ticked loud against the wall, measuring the vast distance between us. Finally, she spoke, her voice so small I almost missed it. "I thought I needed space," she whispered. "I thought you were the problem. I thought if I left, I'd feel free." "I didn't realize," she trailed off, shaking her head miserably. "I didn't realize you were the only thing holding me together." I wanted to feel triumphant. I wanted to throw her words back at her, to let her taste the bitterness she fed me the night she screamed me out of her life. But all I felt was an aching emptiness, the kind that no apology could fill. I leaned back, staring at the cracks in the ceiling. I remembered the day we moved in, how we laughed about fixing it up, how Marlene joked we were too broke for perfection. Back then, imperfections were something we cherished, reminders that we were building something real. Somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing the beauty in broken things. And maybe I did too. I told her I needed some air. I stepped outside, leaving her sitting there with her guilt and her shattered pride. The evening air was cold, biting through my jacket, but it was clean. It didn't stink of regret like the living room did. I walked down the porch steps and into the quiet street, past the familiar hedges and cracked sidewalks. I found myself at the old park down the block, sitting on a rusted swing that groaned under my weight. The sky was a deep indigo, stars trying to pierce through the heavy clouds. I shoved my hands in my pockets and stared at the ground, feeling more lost than I ever had in my life. Part of me wanted to go back inside, wrap Marlene in my arms, and pretend none of it had ever happened. Pretend we were still those two stupid kids who thought love alone could weather any storm. But the other part of me, the part that had spent a week alone, questioning everything, crying in a motel room where no one could see, knew better. Love isn't enough if it's only coming from one side. Love isn't enough if you have to beg someone to want you. Somewhere deep in my gut, I knew it was over. Maybe not officially. Maybe not tonight. But the foundation had cracked too deep, and no amount of patchwork promises would fix it. When I finally walked back toward the house, I didn't feel like I was coming home. I felt like I was walking into someone else's memory, a memory I no longer belonged in. And Marlene, sitting curled up on that couch clutching a photo of a man she didn't love enough to fight for, wasn't my wife anymore. Not really. I don't know how long I stood there just staring at her from the doorway. Marlene didn't notice me at first. She was sitting on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, twisting the hem of her sweatshirt around her fingers like a scared kid waiting to be scolded. For a split second, something inside me softened, that old instinct to protect her, to fix everything. But it didn't take long for the reality to settle in again, heavier than before. This wasn't something I could fix. I finally stepped inside, shutting the door quietly behind me. Marlene's head jerked up, her eyes wide and bloodshot. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. I sat down across from her, leaving a wide gap between us that neither of us tried to close. She was the first to break the silence. "Grant, I didn't mean it. I swear. I was angry. I was scared. I thought pushing you away would make everything clearer. I thought I needed space, but the second you left, it felt like I couldn't breathe." Her voice cracked, and she wiped at her face angrily, like she was furious at herself for crying. I wanted to believe her. God, part of me was still so desperate to believe her. To cling to the idea that we could glue the pieces back together if we just tried hard enough. But that part of me was smaller now, weaker, drowned out by the weeks of silence. The image of her face twisted in rage when she screamed that she didn't need me. That damage couldn't be undone with a few tearful apologies. "You said you were better off without me," I said quietly, forcing her to meet my eyes. "You made that choice, Marlene. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because you threw me out with your words." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Good. Maybe she needed to feel even a fraction of what I'd carried since that night. "I was wrong," she whispered. So wrong. I realize that now. Please, just give me a chance to make it right. Make it right." As if the pain could be papered over with a few date nights and hollow promises. As if trust grew back instantly once it had been ripped out by the roots. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "You don't get it, do you? I said, my voice breaking despite myself. It's not just that you said it. It's that you meant it. Maybe not forever, maybe not completely, but in that moment, you believed it. You believed you'd be happier without me. And now that you've seen the other side of that choice, you want to take it back. But Marlene, some things once broken can't be fixed. Some things you can't unsay. She started crying again, real heavy sobs that shook her whole body. It tore at something inside me, but I stayed rooted where I was. I didn't go to her. I didn't comfort her. Not because I didn't care, but because for the first time in years, I cared enough about myself to stay still. I realized then how one-sided everything had become. For so long, I had been the one patching the cracks, carrying the weight for both of us, pretending it was normal to feel invisible in your own marriage. And when I finally collapsed under the weight, she hadn't reached out a hand. She'd shoved me even deeper into the hole. It wasn't love anymore. It was survival. And I was tired of surviving for someone who would rather drown alone than hold on to me. I stood up, and Marlene's eyes snapped to me, wide and terrified. Please don't go, she choked out, reaching toward me with trembling fingers. I'll change. I'll do anything. Please, Grant. For a second, the world seemed to tilt. I saw flashes of everything we used to be. The lazy mornings, the inside jokes, the way she used to trace circles on my back when she thought I was asleep. And then just as quickly, those memories were washed away by the sound of her voice that night, shrieking that she didn't need me. I shook my head slowly. I'm not the one who needs to change, I said. You need to figure out why you thought you'd be better without me in the first place. And until you do, we're done. The words hung in the air between us, final and immovable. She crumpled inward, sobbing into her hands. I turned and walked toward the door, every step feeling heavier than the last. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. As I stepped out into the night, the cold air hit me like a slap. It was sharp, brutal, but honest, a reminder that pain doesn't kill you. It wakes you up. I didn't know where I was going yet. I didn't know who I was going to be without her. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of finding out. I had spent too many years shrinking myself to fit into a life that didn't have room for me. Now it was time to build a new one, even if I had to do it alone. The hardest part wasn't walking out the door. It wasn't hearing Marlene's broken sobs fading behind me or feeling the invisible thread that tied us together finally snap. No, the hardest part came later, in the small, ordinary moments where her absence echoed the loudest. I drove around for a while that night with no destination in mind. The streets were mostly empty, lit only by the occasional flickering street lamp. I ended up at an all-night diner. The kind with chipped counters and waitresses who called you Han, no matter how bad you looked. I ordered a coffee I didn't drink and a slice of pie I didn't touch. I just sat there, staring blankly at the Formica tabletop, wondering when the numbness would wear off, and terrified of what would happen when it did. My phone buzzed a few times in my pocket. I didn't need to look to know it was Marlene. Voicemails, texts, apologies that were too late. I turned the phone off and shoved it deep into my jacket. I couldn't hear her voice anymore. I couldn't let her pull me back into the wreckage we had made of each other. The following days blurred together. I crashed at a cheap motel just off the highway, a different one this time. One even grimmer than the last, if that was possible. The wallpaper peeled like dead skin, the carpet crunched underfoot, and the bed smelled faintly of cigarettes and sadness. But it was mine. It was the first place I had that wasn't tied to her. Every morning, I would wake up and sit on the edge of that lumpy mattress, staring at the ugly curtains, telling myself it was a new day, a better day. Some days, it even felt true. I got a job doing warehouse work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. The kind of labor that left your muscles aching and your mind too tired to spiral into the past. I made enough to pay for the motel and greasy takeout and the occasional six-pack to drown out the loneliness when it got too loud. And it did get loud, especially late at night, when everything was still and there was nothing left to distract me from the truth. I missed her. God help me, I missed her. Even after everything, the words, the betrayal, the way she had broken us without a second thought, I still missed the version of her I had loved. The Marlene who used to dance barefoot in our kitchen. The Marlene who used to pull me back into bed on lazy Saturday mornings, laughing at whatever excuse I tried to give. But that Marlene was gone. Maybe she had been gone long before she ever told me she didn't need me. One night, about 2 weeks after I left, I got a call from Heather again. I almost didn't answer. but something in my gut told me I should. She's not doing well, Heather said without preamble. Her voice was tight with worry. She's been calling you nonstop. She's been drinking. She's not eating. She's a mess, Grant. I closed my eyes, pressing the phone tighter to my ear as if I could block out the words. I didn't know what Heather wanted from me. Pity? Guilt? Forgiveness? She needs you, Heather added, her voice softening. She knows she messed up. She's not herself without you. I let the silence stretch so long that Heather finally sighed. Just think about it, she said. She's still your wife. That last part stung more than anything. She's still your wife. But was she? Was the woman I loved still in there somewhere, buried under all the hurt and fear and pride? Or was she just another ghost now, haunting the places we used to be happy? I hung up without making any promises. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat outside on the curb in front of the motel, staring up at the stars, chain-smoking cheap cigarettes I bought from a vending machine in the lobby. I thought about everything. The good, the bad, the dreams we built together, and the lies we let fester between us. And slowly, a painful, freeing truth settled into my bones. I couldn't save her. I couldn't save us. All I could do was save myself. It didn't matter how much I had loved her, how much I still loved the memory of who she used to be. Love wasn't supposed to feel like drowning. Love wasn't supposed to make you feel small. Sometimes walking away isn't the coward's choice. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you'll ever do. And as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in bruised shades of pink and gold, I made my decision. I wasn't going back. Not to her. Not to the ruins of our marriage. Not to the man I had been when I thought love meant staying no matter how much it hurt. I was done bleeding for someone who would have let me die 1,000 small deaths without ever noticing. And when Marlene realized that, really realized it, I knew it would destroy her. But by then, I would be long gone. I didn't leave a note. I didn't send a final text. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't cheapen the silence I had finally made peace with. I packed my few things into the battered duffel bag, checked out of the motel before the sun was fully up, and drove without looking back. The town shrank behind me like a bad memory slipping out of view. The road ahead was empty, stretching out under a brightening sky, wide and open and waiting. I didn't know exactly where I was going yet. Somewhere new. Somewhere that didn't carry the ghosts of arguments and broken promises. I had a little savings, a tank full of gas, and, for the first time in what felt like forever, a sense of possibility buzzing under my skin. I crossed state lines by noon, feeling lighter with every mile. I stopped at a diner off the highway, a better one this time, where the waitress smiled like she meant it and the coffee tasted like actual coffee. I sat at the counter with a hot meal and a notebook I bought at a gas station, flipping it open to a blank page. At the top, I wrote 3 simple words: start over today. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't some grand mission statement, but it was enough. I spent the next few weeks finding odd jobs, painting fences, fixing roofs, helping out at a small-town bookstore that smelled like paper and sunshine. I rented a tiny studio apartment above a bakery, and every morning the smell of fresh bread woke me up before my alarm. I started running again, something I hadn't done since college, just to feel my lungs burn with something other than regret. And little by little, the pieces of me that had been shattered started stitching themselves back together. There were bad days, of course. Days when I woke up missing the version of Marlene I had loved, aching with a kind of grief that didn't have a funeral. But even on the worst days, I knew I had made the right choice. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't living for someone else's approval. I wasn't shrinking myself to fit into someone else's life. I was just me. Broken, healing, messy, but real. About 3 months later, on a warm afternoon while I was helping the bookstore owner set up for a local fair, I met someone. Her name was Clara. She had kind eyes, a loud laugh, and an easy way of talking that made it feel like I had known her forever even though we had just met. We didn't fall into some whirlwind romance. It wasn't fireworks and dizzying passion. It was slow, careful, honest. 2 people who had been broken in different ways, finding comfort in the simple fact that they didn't have to pretend. Clara didn't try to fix me. She didn't need me to fix her. We just stood beside each other, steady and whole in our brokenness. And maybe that's all love ever really needs to be. I never heard from Marlene again after that night. Maybe she found her own path, her own healing. I hope she did. I don't hate her. I don't even resent her. She taught me a brutal, beautiful lesson about what love isn't, and because of that, I learned what it truly can be. So if you're reading this, wondering if you'll ever survive the kind of heartbreak that guts you from the inside out, hear it from me. You will. You'll survive. And someday, when you least expect it, you'll find yourself smiling for no reason at all, and you'll realize you didn't just survive. You started living again. And there's nothing more beautiful than that.